Hello there my friends and welcome to my army overview for my Ultramarines army. This overview is accurate as of early May 2024, so if you're watching this substantially later than that, then, well, it may not be so accurate anymore. Now before we continue, I would like to give a special shout out to my Discord member Scorpius, who compiled the points of these units together for me because I, at this point, still don't know how it all works, so big shout out to you, buddy. Just make sure you guys don't mention Horus Heresy to him, because it kind of makes him a little wild. And on top of that, this footage here is the last footage I've recorded using my phone camera since getting my new one. So, RIP phone camera, you served us well. And anyhow, with that out of the way, let's get rolling in the order in which I made them, starting with the very first unit I ever made. And here they are, the beginning of my painting journey, my dear firstborn Devastator squad. From the sergeant, he is equipped with a thunder hammer and a bolt gun. There's also a fellow with a missile launcher, a heavy bolter, a plasma cannon, a las cannon, and of course, the little ammo cherub over there. I didn't even paint the bases on these guys. Ah man, does make me cringe a wee bit, but adorable first beginnings, as they say, and I will not paint over them for the world. These guys are 120 points. Next we have my Outriders, my first ever foray into shading and highlighting. The jump between my first unit and the second unit is substantially notable, and I couldn't be more proud of them. In addition to the twin-linked bolters attached to the front of their bikes, they're equipped with chainswords and heavy bolt pistols, and together they come in at 80 points. Next, we have my first quote-unquote big boy, my Primaris Dreadnought, or Ted the Dread as he is lovingly known. He is a great unit to magnetize, but alas, was the final unit before I discovered magnetizing my units, so he is permanently stuck with his huge power fist and an onslaught Gatling cannon. This fine meatball in a mech suit comes in at 210 points. And next here we have my first true character unit, a Primaris Chaplain on a bike, or Charlie Chaplin. Yes indeed. So in addition to his bike being decked out with the usual twin-linked bolt guns like his other fellows on the Outriders, he's also equipped with a heavy bolt pistol and his winged rhythm stick. You fear the stick. But yes, this fine sprightly fellow clocks in at 75 points. Next, I have what is my biggest boy thus far, my Primaris Repulsor Executioner, who might well be my pride and joy at the moment. He's certainly a centerpiece. This fellow comes in with an array of armaments, but one of my prides about this fellow is that the laser destroyer is magnetized, and it can be swapped out for a plasma incinerator, which is a whole barrel of fun. It was also my first time, if I recall correctly, dry brushing any highlights, and I think it went very well. As you can imagine, a big bad boy like this clocks in a big bad price point. So it clocks in at 220 points. And next, in order to look after our big boy, is the Primaris Tech Marine, or Jam Man, as I call him, after my dear friend, who is also a techie. I also used this guy for my first ever attempt to varnish a Mini. It didn't turn out quite as matte as I hoped for, but in the end it gave him a pretty distinctive look, and I know good places where I could or couldn't use this particular varnish to good effect. This fine fellow here clocks in at 55 points. Next we have my Primaris Intercessors. They are specifically two squads, it would seem. I've always been particularly proud of how these guys turned out. They were quite a lot of effort because I magnetized all their arms and all their heads just to see how well I could do it. It was mainly for practice, you see, but I do love being able to pose and customize them how and as I see fit. I think at the time they were also my best example of highlights done pretty well for a beginner. At least I think so. So these squads are 80 points each, or 160 for the lot of them here. Next we have another kind of intercessor, the Jump Pack Assault Intercessors. Now these guys for some reason I struggled with, I'm not sure why. Perhaps it was mojo, perhaps it was skill level, who knows why. But in the end, I find the end results were very, very good. I did not magnetize the heads like I did with the last intercessors, but I did magnetize their arms. Seeing them now reminds me how much I look forward to working on glow effects for things like their engines and blasts coming out of their thrusters. But yes, these fine diplomatic fellows clock in at 85 points. And next here we have the Invader ATV, with complimentary cat fur, of course. Currently, this is the only model I have that has no base, which winds me up for some odd reason, but that's just the way it be. This guy was also my first attempt using any kind of sponging to get some good effects. I got some pretty decent scratches out of him and whatnot, and ultimately I really like how it looks. Oh, and also I did a few little hazard stripes there by the turret, and I'm very pleased with how that went, even though it was a fairly small one. And I must also say, I'm not sure how this thing could keep up with the Outriders, as he can be connected to the Outriders. I guess it's more for assault purposes than recon, and they will generally slow down for him. But still, that's the only gripe I got. This fine four-wheeled fellow clocks in at 70 points. Next we have another favourite of mine. I seem to have a thing for vehicles. The Ballistus Dreadnought. Oh yes, pure, angry, ranged firepower. This guy was my first attempt at masking out parts of the model and then painting over it to get some nice, clean lines, as you can see on the white stripes on his arms or sides, or I don't know what you'd call them, where his arms should be. I also did, I don't know if it's enough to call it a kit bash, but technically I suppose it is. I took the missile from the missile launcher of my Devastator squad, cut a hole into his missile pod, and then added it in as a missile that is in the midst of being launched. And I'm really proud of how well it turned out, even if the painting of the missile itself is still a bit basic from my early days. This chimichonka clocks in at 140 smackaroos. And here we can see my Primaris aggressors, equipped with their Flamestorm gauntlets, I think was the name if I remember correctly. These ones were an interesting challenge to magnetize, but it was successful, and I can indeed swap between the Flamestorm gauntlets and their Boltstorm gauntlets, I think they are, and Fragstorm missile launchers. You'll have to forgive me, I don't clearly remember the names. They were also my first ever attempt at using a soldering iron to do some serious battle damage, and I think they look absolutely dope for it. But yes, these nice, badly battle-damaged boys come in at a nice juicy 120 points. And at the time of recording, last but most certainly not least, we have the Primaris Apothecary, and the poor sod he stood on. Now this guy notes my first ever usage of Blood for the Blood God. Maybe I went a little OTT with it, but frankly, I like it. It's a messy job, you know what I'm saying? I also magnetized the head so I could have him bareheaded, for some reason, or helmeted, as he should be. I also take note of how I gradually built him up from black, built him up to white, and then kind of lowered him back down again. It was a bit of a funky process, but in the end, I kind of like the vaguely off-white we got from the guy. But yes, this fine friendly doctor of ours clocks in at 50 points. So in the end, when you add them all up, the Devastator Squad, the Outriders, the Primaris Dreadnought, the Primaris Chaplain on a Bike, the Primaris Repulsor Executioner, the Primaris Techmarine, the Intercessor Squad, both of them, the Jump Pack Assault Intercessors, the Invader ATV, the Ballistus Dreadnought, the Aggressors, and the Primaris Apothecary, we get ourselves, mental arithmetic, 1,385 points. Well, okay, that's pretty decent actually, it's pretty decent. I will continue to build them, of course, until they at least get to 2,000. But don't you guys worry, I will certainly be building units for other factions long before I get to the 2,000 point mark for my Ultramarines army. But this army will indeed always hold a special place in my heart and in my taxes, as they should for all of us. As anyone's first army should, really. And I couldn't be prouder of them. And I am oh so thankful for all of the people I've encountered in this journey who have given me amazing tips and advice, things that work, things that don't, ways I can achieve things I want, even things I've never thought of before, and I feel I have learnt and grown so quickly in such a relatively short space of time, and I feel I have to thank you, the folks watching all of my stuff for this, so thank you 1,000. Right, and with that guys, that is my Ultramarine army. I do hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully I'll be updating it again in future. But until then, remember, the Emperor is always guiding your brush.